Ready? Ready to go? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Smith, and I'm the MLA for Drayton Valley, Devon, and this farm is in my constituency. I'm very happy to be here today with Premier Kenny and with Minister Drysdale, and this is a great opportunity to share the beauty of rural Alberta and to introduce some of Alberta's great farmers and agricultural producers. I would like to say a special thank you to Ken Lewis for opening his farm to us today. And I'd like to acknowledge His Worship Mayor William Choi from Stony Plain. Now, Lewis Farms is a large mixed farming operation and a perfect place to showcase the Alberta's primary agriculture sector and that it's export oriented. And it's my pleasure now to turn it over to Premier Jason Kenney and to share some good news about Alberta's agri-food exports. Premier?
Devin, Drayton Valley?
Drayton Valley.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks to the Lewis Farm for welcoming us to this beautiful farm. And Mayor, great to have you. Mark, thanks for welcoming us to Devin Drayton Valley constituency and to be here with Ag Minister Devin Drysdale. You know, these are very tough times for Alberta with high unemployment, the biggest contraction in the world economy since the Depression of the 1930s, with the biggest collapse in energy prices in history. And yet, despite that, a lot of great things are happening in Alberta's economy. It's important that we Albertans have a sense of hope, how we are getting through this, and we will come out stronger than ever on the other side. And one of the reasons for hope, one of the reasons for our resilience, one of the reasons we can be optimistic about Alberta's economy is Alberta agriculture. Farms like this all across our province that are such an important part of our history, but also of our economic future. The ag sector in Alberta employs about 77,000 people, about $9 billion of economic value to our province. And I am here today to announce some very exciting news. Based on reports from commodities companies, the rail companies, from farm groups, and Alberta agriculture, we believe that this may be the single biggest year in the history of Alberta agriculture, with perhaps an unprecedented bumper crop across the Canadian prairies and here in Alberta. One of the largest crops in history, some of the greatest yields for grain and oilseeds producers, for producers of lentils and peas, for canola and wheat, at very strong prices that are going to give a big boost to our farmers all across the province. And we're doing very well this year as well with our livestock industries, our famous Alberta cattle and other livestock industries. So my message today to Albertans is, yes, 2020 is a tough year, but there are some real signs and reasons for hope and optimism. And at the center of that is Alberta agriculture. This is, as I say, a big year for Alberta's farms and food production. We're seeing great prices for Alberta pulses and grains. September's crop report is estimated at 112% of the average over the past 5 years, which have been good years. Canadian wheat exports are up 30% higher than last year, at 2.8 million tons as of September 20th, as of last week. Oil crop exports, like canola, are up 1 million tons over last year. That's a 20% increase for Canadian exports, despite the problems we've had with the big Chinese market. And those exports are being sold for more than $500 a ton, the highest price we've seen in quite a while. So this is great news. Our agriculture sector is a powerhouse for our economy, and there's tremendous opportunity for the sector to be a big contributor to Alberta's recovery from the pandemic and global recession. As I say, ag helped to build our province. Speaking of which, we often identify with the agriculture with the pioneer history, but we should also celebrate the fact that First Nations communities in Alberta are continuing to grow their footprint in the agriculture sector. Just this morning, the Kainai Band, the Blood Reserve, is securing an important credit facility to expand their forage business, where they are now becoming one of the largest forage producers in Canada, selling high-quality specialty product to the Japanese market. Just one good example of how our First Nations are increasingly part of Alberta's agriculture strategy. And speaking of that strategy, I'm here today with Minister Drysdale to announce that as we continue to grow more crops, get better yields at good prices, we have to ensure that global markets are there for our farmers to sell to. And so today we are announcing an expansion of Alberta's agriculture export promotion network around the world. The legislature just passed legislation to create the new Invest Alberta agency. Its board just selected its new CEO. And Invest Alberta will be working with our network of offices around the world and we'll be adding folks from Alberta Agriculture to a number of those offices to expand market access for Alberta agricultural products. Very excited to see this happening in the United States, in the European Union, in Mexico, and in Singapore. It will also complement Alberta Ag international exposure in the Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, and New Delhi offices. So this is part of Alberta's recovery plan, our bold and ambitious plan to build, to diversify, and to create tens of thousands of new jobs. When we unveiled Alberta's recovery plan in the last week of June, the first government in Canada to have a overall COVID-19 economic recovery plan, we showed that there would be several sector strategies. And today's announcement is an important part of our agriculture sector strategy. We'll have other exciting announcements to make in the days to come about that. In fact, Devin, I know, made an announcement earlier this week. So we have aggressive new growth targets as part of the Alberta Recovery Plan ag sector strategy. We are targeting an 8.5% increase per year for value-added agricultural exports and a 7.5% increase for the primary agricultural sector. Together, these new growth targets will increase agri-food exports to $16.6 billion by 2023. That's a 43% increase from the 2018 level of $11.6 billion. So these are bold targets. These are frankly stretch targets. But with the incredible advances of ag technology, productivity, crop science, irrigation, sophisticated equipment, more effective fertilizers, more effective farming techniques, zero-tillage farming, all of the exciting things that are happening with higher and higher yields, we believe that with the support of an expanded international export market network supported by the government of Alberta, that we will be able to hit that 43% increase in ag exports, helping to fuel our economic recovery. Like I say, great news, and now we're going to hear more details from a fifth-generation Alberta farmer himself, the Minister for Agriculture and Forestry, the Honourable Devin Drysdale.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a beautiful day here, and thanks again, Ken Lewis, for having us at your farm. You can't control the weather, but beautiful setup you have here, and a little jealous of that Fendt tractor. It's not my kind of green, but it's a pretty good-looking machine. But it's great to be here today, and appreciate MLA Mark Smith for having us out here in his constituency. And this week, I had the pleasure of touring a few different farms and ranches across the province. It's much better than being in the legislature, I assure you, and really to highlight how agriculture is so important to Alberta's recovery plan. And Alberta's government sees agriculture as a key economic driver for our province, and it's always been a major contributor to the province, as the Premier mentioned. But the past few years of record-setting highs in food manufacturing have really put the potential in the spotlight of this industry right in the mainstream media, for sure. But even this year, with crashing oil prices and a global pandemic, agriculture did hold its own. And the Alberta government has an economic recovery plan that sets out a very ambitious agriculture sector strategy that we made an announcement yesterday, but we will continue in the coming days and weeks as we unveil it. But we announced yesterday with Minister Doug Schweitzer, the new Jobs, Economy and Innovation Minister, provincial support for Olds College to integrate a venture capital group from Silicon Valley to partner and to identify and then directly fund and guide Alberta agriculture startups to attract investment and create jobs here in the province. Now, as everyone knows, agriculture here in the province heavily relies on exports, and so that is why global trade is so essential. And as the Premier highlighted, we had about $2.4 billion in beef exports that come from the province every year, $2 billion in wheat, more than $2 billion in canola oil and seed sales. And this all adds up to about $12 billion in agriculture exports every year. And the total production estimates of this year's crop is 26.8 million. That's up 11% from last year, and about 16.5% higher than normal. And as the Premier mentioned, that is estimated to be a new record for the province of Alberta. But obviously there are some areas in the province, especially north of Edmonton and a band across the east and west, that has lower than average yields. But overall, 2020 is a banner year for agriculture in Alberta. So with all this record crop, we need to have a place to sell, and that is why expanding our market opportunities and hiring more officers in Alberta international offices in Mexico City and Singapore are vitally important. We are working with the Invest Alberta Corporation to identify places in the United States and the EU to set up agriculture-specific employees. And this will be in addition to our network that is in Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, and New Delhi. So focusing on these 8 international offices is key to be able to promote Alberta agriculture products to export and also to attract investment to Alberta. And we also announced commitment to help build value-added agriculture capacity and bolster economic activity with an aggressive private sector investment attraction target of $1.4 billion. And that investment attraction initiative will create more than 2,000 jobs and get Albertans back to work in emerging sectors like hemp, ag tech, and value-added processing of grain, oil seeds, plant protein, and high-quality meat processing. And we've also set aggressive export targets that the Premier mentioned of 7.5% and 8.5% of value-added and primary ag production. And if we do meet those by 2023, it should be a $16.6 billion increase from previous records. So with all of this together, it is important that we have new footholds in new markets and attract foreign investment, and diversifying our economy and attracting investment with Canada's most competitive tax environment that we already have. We are putting Alberta on a path for a generation of growth. And with that, I'd like to thank the Lewis family for having us here today, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. So before we get started, I'd like to ask the media, there's a great deal of you guys on the line today. If you could limit yourself to one question. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Thank you. The first question is from Chris Varco of the Calgary Herald. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is a question for the Premier. It's off topic, but Premier, earlier this week, President Trump issued a presidential border crossing permit for the Alaska-Alberta Railway project. Does the Alberta government support the project? Have you considered what kind of impact it would have on the province? And separately, have you considered providing any support for it, financially or otherwise?
Well, first, we were very happy that the A2A, Alberta to Alaska Railway project, did receive a presidential permit this week. That's been a couple of years in the works, and we have been advocating for that with the U.S. administration. I've had a number of conversations with the governor of Alaska and with the Alaskan congressional delegation about the A2A project, and our energy minister, Sonia Savage, and other representatives of Alberta's government have met with the folks from A2A. We're very excited about the possibility of this project to add yet another major export avenue for Alberta commodities and from all across Western Canada. I will say that the project is still quite preliminary. It's conceptual. They estimate something like a $16 billion capital investment required to build the A2A project up through from Edmonton through British Columbia, Yukon, and down to Anchorage, Alaska. And they have not yet lined up the financing. I think they have some of it in place. They have some First Nations support. They are moving forward, I think, successfully with Indigenous consultation on both the U.S. and the Canadian side of the border. So progress is being made, but I think it's still early days, too soon to pop any champagne corks. My understanding about the concept here is that more and more we see left-wing politicians trying to sterilize West Coast ports from exporting commodities. All of these left-wing politicians who are opposed to our resource and commodities industries, who seem to think that we can run a modern industrial economy on good wishes and fair trade coffee shops or something. Efforts to block exports of not only, of course, oil, but also liquefied natural gas, lumber, coal, rare earth minerals, etc. And so the concept behind A2A, as explained to me by the governor of Alaska, is that Alaska, like Alberta, is a commodities resource jurisdiction. They understand the value of these, the importance of these products to the lives of working women and men. And they're saying, look, if California, Oregon, Washington, maybe BC, don't allow some of these products to get exported, we'll allow it to happen through Alaska. So I like that talk. I like that idea. And we're certainly open to ongoing discussions about how Alberta can facilitate A2A. We've also raised this with the Government of Canada. We have not considered a provincial government financial investment in this. Again, I think the project is still very early, and we would have to see, before we even consider that, we would have to see major private sector backing. If this is unable to attract a private sector risk capital, then we would not be participating as provincial government.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Rick Bell, Calgary Sun.
Good afternoon, Premier. I'll ask this before somebody else does. The NDP today are demanding a formal apology because of a comment or comments that one of your backbenchers made about CERB, and creating quite a firestorm, I gather, on social media. Some people might consider this much ado about nothing. Some people might consider this very horrendous, or somewhere in between. Where do you stand on this? Are you going to be formally apologizing? Are you going to be, as the NDP is asking, make the backbench MLA make amends? Where do you stand on all this?
Well, the NDP has to manufacture its outrage of the day every day on Twitter. It's what they do, I guess, for entertainment value. The comments in question are clearly being torqued and taken out of context. Obviously, many people during the COVID recession do need income support, and the CERB has been there to provide that support for a lot of folks who have lost their jobs or lost working hours through no fault of their own. We totally get that. And that's why Alberta is so focused on getting back to economic growth so those people can go back to work. At the same time, I think what the MLA was saying is that many businesses are reporting that, strangely, they're having a hard time hiring people in the midst of 12 or 15% unemployment. And we hear it, especially from the service industry. I've heard it from all across the province. We've heard it from the Federation of Independent Business, Restaurants Canada, Chambers of Commerce, and other job creators that, unfortunately, some people have not gone back to work because they have that income to fall back on. So it does appear to have had some kind of created some kind of distortion in the labor market. I wouldn't say for most people, but for some people. And that is something we've raised with the Government of Canada. Secondly, he did point out that there appears to be evidence that links this program with the very disturbing increase in addiction overdoses. There was a extensive report in the CBC a couple of days ago detailing comments from experts who work with people struggling with addictions, indicating that this additional money for some people who are trapped in addiction has made dangerous drugs more accessible, and that has undoubtedly led to in part, as one of the causes behind the significant increase in addiction deaths. So we should listen to those people who work in the field of addictions. There's no easy answers here. You've got to have support for people during tough times. Of course, the vast majority of people are using that support because they have no alternative. But at the same time, we got to make sure that we don't end up discouraging people in the long run from getting back into the job market. And we need to make sure that this doesn't have a negative impact on people coping with addictions.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Steve Cito, 660 News.
Hi there. It was reported that layoffs were occurring at TC Energy. Will the money the province invested into the company be returned to taxpayers?
First of all, I understand the province has not been notified, and we have to be notified if there are significant layoffs at a workplace. The $1.5 billion preferred equity investment is related to the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. You can see a report out today about how that's turned the community of Oyen into a boom town. An East Central Alberta community that desperately needed jobs that are being created because of the investment of Alberta's government in the TC Energy Keystone XL project. So we've actually created a mini boom in parts of Alberta where that construction is underway. And my understanding is that I haven't got a clear definition from TC Energy. Our understanding this deals with the NGTL system, a natural gas pipeline system. And I do know that TC Energy just put out a statement, I think it was yesterday, about how the federal government further delayed approvals back in May for the major expansion of the National Gas Trunk Line, which is the key backbone of the natural gas industry in Western Canada. And that has cost us about 8,500 jobs in this construction season. So I'll refer any additional questions to TC Energy itself. But the point is, they are doing the work where we are partners on the Keystone XL pipeline that is creating jobs, thousands of good-paying jobs, and creating secondary jobs for the service industries in the communities between Hardisty and the Saskatchewan-Montana border. And secondly, we would call on the federal government to get out of the way of job creation by approving the application for the expansion of the natural gas trunk line system.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Emma Greeny, Globe and Mail.
Yeah, g'day, Premier. Speaking of energy, big shock that I'm going to ask about this, but obviously Shell and BP are both moving away from carbon. Shell today has said that they're going to be cutting 9,000 jobs. BP is going to cut about 10,000 globally. So, I mean, is your government betting too much on oil and gas as the world kind of moves on? Did you wait too long to diversify? And I guess as well, like, given how much you like to sell the message that Alberta oil meets ESG standards, we're doing great here, look at us, aren't we awesome? Why, as a province, will you not set a net zero emissions goal like they have in Newfoundland so that you could more effectively take that message to markets that Alberta does, in fact, take emissions and climate change seriously?
Well, first of all, with respect to Shell and BP, these are huge global companies, and they're going to decide how they what their labor force is. I do note that Shell just announced major new investments in hydrocarbon energy in African dictatorships, and that's pretty much how it rolls these days, moving capital and jobs from a democracy with the highest human rights, labor, and environmental standards on earth, Canada, to jurisdictions, with radically lower environmental, human rights, and labor standards. I think that's profoundly cynical. In terms of should Alberta move away from oil and gas, Emma, Alberta has the third largest proven and probable reserves of oil on the face of the earth. At current prices, 172 billion barrels we're talking about something in this range of $10 trillion of notional value. That's just on the crude oil side, doesn't even include our enormous Canadian natural gas reserves. We are, of course, the 5th largest producer of oil in the world. Even at the depth of the COVID recession, global consumption has been about 78, 80 million barrels per day. You saw ConocoPhillips the other day project a pretty standard market projection that by the end of next year, following the COVID global recession, we can expect to see global demand and consumption back up to around 100 million barrels per day. So I'll remind you what we say all the time, which is that if we're not part of that, of supplying that demand, then the OPEC dictatorships in Russia will have a field day. We'll be enriching Vladimir Putin and the royal families of the OPEC dictatorships. I don't think that's good for global security or the environment. And in terms of have we waited too long to diversify, Emma, the oil and gas as a share of Alberta's economy has shrunk by 1/3 over the past 35 years. And we are the 3rd most diversified economy in Canada. Our recovery plan is about continuing the acceleration of economic diversification. So we'll continue. And in terms of net zero, look, we're not going to make. People have a right to be cynical about empty political promises on emissions. That's something we've been seeing from Canadian political leaders and folks all around the world ever since Kyoto was signed back in 1997. And so what we're going to focus on is actual, deliverable, measurable results. That's what we're doing. The large announcements made by our government in the past 2 weeks related to the Technology Innovation and Emissions Reduction Fund demonstrate the seriousness of our commitment to reducing the carbon intensity of Canada's oil and gas sector.
Okay, we have time for 3 more. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Yes, Raphael Buchakanian, CBC.
Hi, Premier. Considering the peaceful anti-racist rallies in Ponoka and Red Deer that were disrupted by far-right groups and the presence of far-right elements last night holding a rally in one of Edmonton's more multicultural neighborhoods, will you clearly denounce the presence of the far-right and of white supremacist groups such as the Soldiers of Odin or the Northern Guard in this province without using equivocating language that blames both sides when it comes to racism? And could you please answer in English and French?
Yeah, I don't, by the way, I don't know whoever equivocates on that, Rafi. Obviously, we condemn racism and racial prejudice in any manifestation. It is un-Canadian and un-Albertan. And, I think it's unfortunate that we've got a small number of kooks who go around trying to get attention for a message of hate. I don't think we should give them the attention that they crave. This is a country that, while imperfect, is built on the concept of human dignity and equality of all before the law, regardless of race, ethnicity, country of origin. And our Minister of Justice, Casey Madhu, the first Black Canadian Justice Minister in history, I think made a very strong statement unequivocally condemning those hateful views and attitudes. I'll say the same in French. Évidemment, nous condamnons n'importe quelle expression de haine. C'est pas les valeurs canadiennes ni albertaines de promouvoir la division ou l'intolérance, les préjugés contre les personnes à cause de leur race, leur origine ethnique ou nationale. Nous sommes un pays fondé sur la dignité humaine, sur l'égalité de tout devant la loi. Et je crois que nous ne devons pas donner l'attention que ces petits groupes de haine cherchent. Ils sont les fous. Ils sont détestables et c'est exactement ce que notre ministre de Justice, Casey Madhu, le premier ministre de Justice d'origine africaine dans l'histoire du Canada, a exprimé. Il a dit exactement ça.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Rob McAnally, CTV News.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for the call, and mine is along the same lines of Rafi's question. I just wanted to know if you could tell us what your message is to those who claim all lives matter, using that racist rhetoric as a guiding light.
Well, my message is, look, I haven't observed firsthand what happened at that rally last night, so I don't know what messages they were circulating. My understanding from secondhand reports is that this is a group of people who were expressing racist attitudes, and we condemn that unequivocally. This is a province and a country built on human dignity and equality of all before the law, and that is our history. We are imperfect as a country. We can always and must always do better, but one way we can do better is to condemn divisive and hateful attitudes based on racial prejudice. So I think our Minister of Justice, Casey Matt, has been very clear about that on this and other instances.
Okay, we have time for one more. Operator, can you please put through the last caller?
Thank you. Yes, Audrey Neveu, Radio Canada.
Hi, Premier. I have a follow-up in English and then just one in French. You mentioned that Casey Madhu, your minister, Justice Minister, condemned these events of violence. He also did that for the Red Deer rally that turned to a confrontation about 10 days ago. But why didn't you yourself go out on social media right away this morning to condemn these? Why did we have to ask you this question if you condemn these acts? And then, en français, je veux savoir si le résultat des élections en Colombie-Britannique dans un mois environ, ça pourrait être bénéfique pour l'industrie pétrolière et gazière et aussi les relations entre l'Alberta et la Colombie-Britannique.
Okay, excusez-moi, est-ce que vous pouvez répéter la question en français? Je n'ai pas entendu dire.
Oui. Il y a des élections en Colombie-Britannique dans un mois environ. Est-ce que, selon vous, un résultat différent donc des élections, ça pourrait améliorer les relations entre l'Alberta et la Colombie-Britannique et avoir un bon impact aussi sur l'industrie pétrolière et gazière?
Sure. On your first question, I've been in caucus and other meetings since 8 a.m. this morning. I just learned about that report about the incident in Edmonton on my way here about half an hour ago. I understand Minister Madhu spoke for the government on that earlier today. On the question sur la question de la Colombie-Britannique, évidemment, c'est pour la population en Colombie-Britannique à choisir leur gouvernement de façon démocratique dans les élections. Et c'est pas pour moi à s'ingérer dans leur choix électoral. Cela étant dit, j'ai développé une relation professionnelle avec le Premier ministre Horgan et j'apprécie qu'il a souligné qu'il n'y a pas des outils disponibles au gouvernement de la Colombie-Britannique à interrompre, à arrêter la construction d'oléoducs Trans Mountain. C'est clair que le chef du Parti libéral de Colombie-Britannique, M. Wilkinson, a pris une position en faveur du développement responsable des ressources. Alors, j'espère que nous pouvons trouver j'espère que nous pouvons trouver une façon à travailler avec le prochain gouvernement de Colombie-Britannique pour créer les emplois, pour le développement des ressources naturelles de façon responsable et pour être les bons partenaires au plan économique.
Thank you very much. That concludes the Q&A.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone, and thanks again to the Lewis Farm, and thanks for bringing out beautiful weather. Cheers.